Hey guys, how you doing? Good morning. Today is Tuesday, May 26th, and this is day 39, but only 9 days left, okay, of our virtual learning initiative here at North Hunterdon High School. And this video is for my financial literacy class. First, guys, hope you had a tremendous Memorial Day weekend. Hopefully, you got to spend some time with family. The weather is beautiful. Hopefully, you guys got to go outside. In terms of what we're going to be doing this week and next week, the final 2 weeks of school, the last 9 days, is we're going to be looking at investment for our retirements and just the fundamentals of investing in general. Okay. This is all going to be through the Foundations of Personal Finance course via Dave Ramsey. It is going to be chapter 8, which is investing. And I think this is a great opportunity for you guys to learn a little bit about the difference between stocks, bonds, mutual funds, money market accounts, maybe the different forms of retirement, such as 401ks, 403bs, what a pension is, so on and so forth. This is usually a really kind of important unit in class and one of my favorite to teach because myself, in terms of when I transitioned from college into the workforce, my generation, if you will, has gone through a change in terms of expectation of employer benefits, as well as like what employers pay for, what happened to pensions and most retirements. And I'm going to talk about that in a couple minutes here, but I just kind of want to update you guys and talk a little bit about the class, okay? So for this week, your assignment will be, here it is, okay? Your assignments are going to be videos 1.1, 1.2, 2.1, and 2.2. You don't have to finish that all this week. It's about an hour total worth of videos. Each video is anywhere from 13 to 15 minutes each. They're really important. I think they're great. I think it's worthwhile for you guys to watch, but that is going to be your assignment for this week. I will have office hours on Friday from 11 to 12 if you have any questions. And then finally, between today and tomorrow, you might be receiving an email from me just because I haven't heard from you. If that is the case, you need to please respond. Otherwise, I need to kind of go further along the process, notify guidance and the administration, and we have to call your parents, things like that. So if I do send you an email, just kind of checking in, seeing where you're at, what's going on, etc. Please do that. Some of you still have not handed in the required work for the course. Please do so in order to receive a grade for the class, or at least for those assignments. You don't want to have a class where it's pretty much a layup, especially during virtual learning, and you're getting a negative grade because you just didn't feel like doing a 10-minute assignment. All right. So with that being said, what you're going to learn about in the story or the things I normally tell my classes when we talk about this unit is my personal transition into the workforce. So I graduated college in 2005. I started working right away. My intention was to go to law school. So I was enrolled in law school at the same time, and I became a law clerk, and then I eventually became a real estate paralegal. But after that, once I finally kind of got settled in, I actually came into teaching, and I decided on my profession. One of the things I learned is the biggest difference in retirement for individuals. So I'll give you an example. My father specifically, my father works for Public Service Electric and Gas, or PSE&G. It's a utility company that is located out of Newark, New Jersey, and it controls and pretty much provides a majority of the electric and gas to homes in northern New Jersey. Now, in case you didn't know this, and this has nothing to do with Dave Ramsey, but believe it or not, utilities companies in the United States are what we call monopolies. They're natural monopolies, so they're allowed to operate pretty much without competition, but they have to provide service to everyone in a specific geographical location. If you want to know more about that, show up to office hours, and I'll tell you, I don't want to bore everybody else who really doesn't care about that. Or, just take AP Economics. But anyway, the point I was trying to make is my father worked for PSE&G, and my father has a pension, similar to what teachers do, right? So teachers have pensions. Now, do me a favor. What I'm about to say, it's got to stay between us, okay? Don't report me. But pensions are fraudulent. I said it. I know I'm going to beneficiary of one, hopefully. Hopefully it'll still be there by the time I retire. But if you think about it, the reason why I say that is this. When you go from my family and my parents' generation, and possibly even your parents' generation, depending on the job, if they're union employees or not, pensions was your form of retirement. And what a pension was is that you would pay in a certain amount over the lifetime of your employment. And then at the end, when you retire, you would be guaranteed a specific percentage of your top earnings over the lifetime of your work. So I'll give you a basic example. Let's say that you earn $100,000 and that's the top of your earnings. So you make $100,000 a year, and your company promises you 60% of your max earnings for life after you retire. So you're going to get paid $60,000 a year from your old company to no longer work for them. Okay? This was kind of like a reward, or more or less like a thank you, saying, hey, thanks for all of your service and your work. When you've put your time in, now you can retire and you go off, but you don't have to worry about working anymore, because now you're going to have some type of supplemental income, even if it's only a fraction of what your earnings are. But if you think about it, most individuals are going to retire in their 60s. I know for myself, I was grandfathered in as a teacher, so I have to do the maximum amount of years service and my age, my retirement age, and things like that, which is, it's okay. You know, it's kind of standard for everyone in my generation, and it's the way the economy works and the way markets work. But to be promised a percentage of your salary, even when you're not working, that's quite a tall task for most companies, okay, to actually provide that kind of funding for everybody. You means you have to have a fund with millions of dollars just sitting in it that just gets paid out. And so it's tough for a lot of companies to actually provide that. And so we saw a transition away from pensions. And the reason being is this, and I'll go back to my fraudulent comment, even though it's in jest, if you think about it, my contributions, or almost any individual's single contributions to their pension, will never equate to the amount of money that they actually receive from that pension fund based on retirement. If I retire at 65 and I live until I'm 85, that means I'm going to get paid that $60,000 figure for 20 years. Okay, so that means that myself specifically is going to command over $1 million from that company. Now, if I'm only one employee and I don't pay over $1 million into that fund, well, how does the company earn that money to cover my pension? And this is where we get into kind of the waters of, well, during the '08 financial crisis, you start to hear about pension funds just getting crushed and people losing everything. And that's because companies, in order to fund pensions, have to take on some risk. And so they invest that pension money that we all provide the company and try to grow their pension fund in order to actually be able to pay me, okay, for being retired. And that's why you hear that phrase, pensions are fraudulent, because you're never going to put in the amount of money that you take out. However, fraudulent is a very, very aggressive word, and it's usually meant as a joke. If you think about it, most investments are like that, right? I mean, most people who invest, they're never going to actually make money off investments. They're never going to put in a 1-to-1 ratio. Why would you do that? You want to have or earn or have earnings that are greater than the risk you took by investing in a specific company. And that's why this unit is really, really important for you guys, because you have to learn about, well, wait a minute. If we don't have pensions anymore in most jobs, well, what is the next step? Most jobs specifically have either 401ks or 403bs. And these are like funds that you put money into, and then you have the controls, right? You are behind the wheel, and you can tell the company that manages your 401k or 403b how aggressive to be with trying to grow your retirement. And this is completely up to you. Now, another thing that goes into it is whether or not the company you work for is in fact going to match your contributions. So when we saw the initial transition from pensions to 401ks, companies were like, wow, saving tons of money. We'll match whatever you put in dollar for dollar up to a certain amount. So let's say I put $10,000 per year into my retirement. If my company matched dollar for dollar, I'm actually getting $20,000 in retirement. And then that became really expensive too, because in addition to all of these retirement costs that companies were facing, we also saw an increase in healthcare costs at the same time. So now this caused what we call kind of like a bifurcation along private industry. And that meant that industries had to decide, well, what are they going to spend more money on? Are they going to spend more money on healthcare? Or are they going to spend more money on your retirement? And at the time, healthcare, when you're working, seems like a much more pressing need. So a majority of companies chose healthcare. I'll get into healthcare afterwards, because that's something that's also kind of different for us. When I say us, I mean from my generation and younger, because the world changed a little bit when I entered the workforce. And it might change again when you enter the workforce, but that's okay. Then you can come back to North Hunterdon and you can tell me about your experience, and then I can adjust the course. So what happens is this. Companies then started to reduce and cap the amount that they would actually contribute. Some companies don't even match or contribute at all. The retirement is 100% on yourself. And that in itself is why it is so important you learn about this now. Because, and as Dave Ramsey has been saying, if you've been watching the videos, like I know all of you are, I'm sure no one puts them on, lets them play in the background, plays them at a higher speed. I'm sure none of that happens. But as you heard Dave Ramsey, he says this all the time. You need to live like no one else in order to live like no one else, right? In order to afford to live like no one else. So the question is, and for all you TikTok fans, I'm sure you've seen Gary Vee, right? Gary Vee is all over TikTok. Everybody loves Gary Vee, but he makes the same point. And the idea is this: you need to do the fundamentals now, struggle while you're younger and you can afford it. So as you get older, and when you get older, you have more responsibility, you have greater bills, you have more liabilities, etc. You are better taken care of. So it's important now to learn how to manage your money and now how to invest and prepare for your retirement. So when you are ready, when you have your own family, when you have children, you don't have to say, oh my God, what am I going to do? I spent all of this time worrying about Billy and Johnny and Mark and all of your children and your family that I never actually put away and thought about my own retirement. And my company only gave me a 403B. The reality is that your 401k and 403b are most likely not going to be enough for you to retire comfortably. This doesn't even enter into the factor of the equation, the cost for college for your children, if they go to college, and if you plan on planning for that, so on and so forth. And so there's a lot of different layers of kind of complexity. As you get older, your responsibilities increase and you start to have more to lose. So these things become more and more important. So if you can get the jump on it now at 18 years old, 17 years old, when you get out of high school and you get a job, start putting even a little bit of money away, right? When you start doing that now, it's going to take a lot of that burden off of you as you get older. So when you're in your 40s and 50s, you're not worried about what life is like when you're in your 60s and 70s, because you did the work up front, right? You took care of that in your 20s and your 30s, so you can enjoy the remainder of your life. And that might sound sad or might sound crazy, or for right now, for those of you who are freshmen sitting here listening to this, like, wow, what do I care about that? When you get older, it kind of sneaks up on you real quick. So it's important. This is a super important unit, okay? So when it comes to understanding your retirement, whatever your job provides you most likely is not going to be enough. And that is the standard. It's the industry standard anymore. Pensions don't exist. Companies can't afford it. And companies, in order to afford a pension, have to take on almost incalculable risk to grow these pension funds to have enough money to pay for them, right? There was a joke in the 1990s every time that the government would do some type of either increase in government spending or whatever it might be. Well, where did the money come from? And the joke was, well, the government would just go and put their hand in Social Security and they just put an IOU in there, right? So if you've ever seen Dumb and Dumber, the part where they have the briefcase, and they found the briefcase, all the money, they spent all of the money, and they give it back to the original owners, and they're like, ooh, that napkin right there, that's the IOU for the Ferrari. You should hold on to that one. We'll be good for that in a couple of years. You don't want your retirement to look like a bunch of IOUs written on a napkin, so you kind of have to take things in your own hands, and it's important to do that now, all right? The other thing I was going to talk about is healthcare coverage, okay? So now, teachers in general and any type of union employees, okay? When you're part of a union, you pay dues and you're part of it because of you get two of main benefits, right? The first benefit is what's called collective bargaining, right? So by that I mean this: our union will pretty much negotiate contracts on behalf of all union membership. So all of us will receive the benefits of the negotiations of individuals that we choose to represent us. And the idea is this: in certain industries, as you saw in history now, for those of you, I mean, everyone in this class has taken U.S. history probably about 13 times so far. So I think you have a pretty good understanding of the progressive era, as well as when we saw like child labor laws and labor just changing in general, right? And so when we look at healthcare coverage, okay, healthcare is very, very expensive. When you are part of a union in certain areas, the union will pretty much collectively bargain, and hopefully what happens is that your wages increase, okay, and this is a fact, wages will be increased for a union because of collective bargaining, as well as your benefits should be better, right? So as a teacher, I benefit from being part of a union because the union can negotiate my salary and my healthcare coverage better than I could individually against it. And that's just because of the nature of our employment, right? And so not every company is unionized. Not every profession is unionized. Not every profession needs to be unionized. Okay. The reality is that in certain markets and jobs, you are much better off being able to privately negotiate as compared to being in a union, right? And another thing that people don't really talk about, because everybody loves to talk about the benefits of unions, but unions actually lead to an increase in structural unemployment because of higher wages. Everyone wants union wages, right? Everyone wants those wages, but unfortunately, not everyone's going to be able to have those wages. And then you see people even in unions being unemployed because with the wage increase, producers and businesses can't always sustain it. So typically, sometimes you actually have to, depending on the market and industry, you could be hurting other union members. So I'm not trying. This is not a video on the benefits of being a union. This isn't like union propaganda. This is just me trying to give you some information about how the economics of unions work, specifically in wage markets. And these are things that we talk about, believe it or not, in AP Economics as well. And so in certain industries, though, you are way better off negotiating, your wages on your own. And here's a great example why, right? So trying to think. Okay, so let's say you are a carpenter. Okay, so you see unions in a lot of trade skills and things like that because of unions. Let's be realistic. In the private industry and in private sectors and markets in general, markets don't care about people, they care about efficiency. I know that sounds really kind of cold, but it's true, right? Markets just want to be efficient. They don't really care about equity. So one of the biggest things we talk about in markets when we intervene or have things like minimum wage is, well, what is the trade-off between equity and efficiency? And so a union membership is a trade-off, right? You are trading off. You are losing efficiency in terms of labor markets in exchange for what? In exchange for higher wages and benefits and things like that. So let's just say you are a carpenter and you are in a carpenter's union. Now, you could be one of the greatest carpenters in the world, all right? You could have an unbelievable skill set. Things that you are able to build and produce are rivaled by literally 1% of your fellow carpenters. However, because you're part of a union, you could never privately negotiate based on your skill set for higher wages. An example of that would be, let's say you are a computer science major, right? And you want to go into software engineering. Let's say that you possess a skill where you can just kind of understand code and you're very creative with how you build code for certain products. Since you're not part of a union, if you believe that your skill set and you actually outshine other individuals in your specific area, you then now have the ability to privately negotiate salary based on your skill and demand for your skill. If other people on your team, if you work out of a team of 10, and out of the 9 other people on your team, no one can do what you can do as quickly or as efficiently or as with much skill, then therefore you can go into your employer and you can say, look, no one can do my job. You need me and my skill set because you are benefiting from it. I believe I deserve to be paid more money. And you can use that in your negotiations. Whereas a union, I can't be like, well, I'm the world's greatest financial literacy teacher, pay me more. I have to be paid the same amount as unions. So that is a trade-off, right? And that is a common kind of critique you will see of individuals that don't like unions and so on and so forth. And so it's a give and take. And I believe that in certain industries, unions are definitely beneficiary because it helps. Because sometimes there is a need for a trade-off between efficiency and equity, right? Or equity for efficiency. So that's a great conversation to have at another time, obviously. And if it's something you want to talk about, feel free to pop in office hours and we can talk about it. But why I talked about that in terms of benefits is this: when I went into the labor force, a lot of individuals had medical benefits almost, in some instances, 100% covered by their employers. You wouldn't have to contribute into your medical benefits at all. Like your company would just cover everything. and obviously with the increase in healthcare costs, because if you look at over the last 10 to 15 years, the increase in cost over certain specific industries outside of college and college tuition, healthcare costs have increased dramatically, right? Specifically when it comes to healthcare insurance. And so what happens is that as those costs increase, companies have to make a decision. It's okay, well, do we cover 100% and then just lay off a bunch of employees? Well, if you're one of those people that you were the last person hired and it's only fair to everybody else, you're the first person out the door, you're like, you know what? I'll pay for my health benefits because I want to keep my job, right? And so that's what happened. And so now almost everyone in the workforce has to contribute to their healthcare benefits, right? And so when you see older individuals, individuals who've been in the workforce for 15 to 20, even maybe some more years, okay, you'll hear them, and usually they'll complain about the fact that they have to pay for healthcare because when they first started, they didn't, right? And so it's a very, very interesting area, and I am almost positive that maybe not you guys, but maybe the generations after you or students that come after you, whatever it might be, that when I've been in the labor force for 20 to 25 years, that things are going to be a little bit different too for you guys, and then I'm going to have to pay increased costs, and maybe I'll be the guy that's walking around complaining about it. But that's just kind of how it all works. And so when you get a job, when you're in the workforce, after college, or when you go into the trades, whatever it might be, you will have to fund your own retirement, and you're going to have to pay for your own medical benefits. Okay? Now, and when you're young, you can think about that, right? If you have the ability to manage your contributions, then you can make those decisions for yourself. So if you're young, you're like, look, I'm young, I'm healthy, I take care of myself, don't really go to the doctors, I might want the cheapest level of healthcare coverage. And then all of a sudden, you get married, you have children, you have a family. Healthcare costs are a big deal. I know from personal experience, my wife had twins. It was a high-risk pregnancy. She was in the hospital 8 specific days. Throughout the pregnancy, there were 21 people in the operating room when my children were born, because my just in case my wife needed to have an emergency C-section. Like, it's crazy. Well, all of those people have to get paid. Well, who pays them? My medical insurance does. And I pay a decent amount of money into my healthcare insurance for a high level of coverage because I believe that the money I put into it, I'm getting a greater benefit coming back. But that's a decision that each and every one of you have to make based on your own personal circumstances. What's great for me might not be great for you. And timing is something to think about as well. So those are two really kind of important fundamental concepts I wanted to talk to you about today in terms of understanding how the difference between retirement funds from 15 to 20 years ago to now, to what it might look like when you guys are out. Okay, same thing for healthcare coverage. Miss you guys. Really miss being in the classroom. I know you're almost done. You're kind of revved up, ready to go for summer, especially as some of these restrictions get lifted. But yeah, I'm going to try and hold a Zoom next week just to kind of have some closure. Say goodbye to you guys, things like that. Have a great summer. Just to see you one last time, and then that will be it. All right. So this assignment is for this week and for next week. Okay. So video 1.1, 1.2, 2.1, and 2.2 is going to be investing, retirement, okay, healthcare coverage, things like that. All right. Have a great day, guys. We'll see you later.